To draft a body paragraph for paper number 2, the first thing you want to do is start with a passage from Uncle Tom's Cabin. If you recall, the instructions asked you to find 3 passages that share one of the cultural tensions from our American cultural tensions list in the course. You were to pick one passage from chapters 1 through 15, one from 16 through 30, one from 31 through 45. Once you have your passage, now you can really start the work, because the whole project here is to pair the passages you selected with images from Railton's Uncle Tom's Cabin and American Culture website, which is an amazing collection of artifacts, primary artifacts, from the period that the novel was written. Remember, we want to pair up passages with primary artifacts, things written or created in roughly the same time period as Uncle Tom's Cabin, 1840s through the 1860s. So we don't want to get bogged down in secondary sources, which is where historians and scholars and other people write about primary resources. We want to find a primary resource from the period to pair our passage with. So after we found a passage, we're going to explore Railton's site. I found 2 intriguing resources. One was there was an article written about Topsy on this page. And this article is a really good example of a secondary source, something I don't particularly want to use. But what's really cool about this article is it includes all these primary sources, all these interesting images from the period that are depictions of Topsy in various guises and scenes. So here we get a famous image of Topsy, and then from the novel, from the second illustrated version, the second edition of the novel, which is illustrated. Then there's other representations and images of Topsy here. And I went through and read this piece and thought about all of them as possible tools to connect to the passage that I wrote. If you recall, the passage that I picked to write about is about how Sinclair treats her like she's a parrot or a dog and gives her treats and thinks of her as entertainment. There's some classic Topsy, racist Topsy, minstrelsy type images in here. Here's one. Here's a more sort of dignified image of Topsy, but it's paired with a flagrantly minstrel, racist type image of Topsy, and so on. I go through this piece. There's all sorts of different images. So that's one place that I found something interesting. Using, if we go to Railton's site, using the interpretive mode, where there's a bunch of articles that interpret things in the novel. So that's one tool that I use. But remember, we don't want quotes from these authors. These people like Joan Henrich, Michael Winship, Mary Kelly, they're contemporary 21st century writers writing about the novel. But sometimes they include images or songs or quotes that we can use. But we don't want to use the ideas from here. We're just looking for primary artifacts that they have buried in their essays. But also, the better place to actually find primary text is right here, across the top. All these pretexts are really interesting because they're all images, songs, novels, poems written around the same time as Uncle Tom's Cabin that you can use as context in your body paragraphs, that you can use to compare the quotes that you have to what was going on in the culture, compare the passages you've chosen to what was going on in the culture. So I started exploring minstrel shows, and I ended up finding a really cool image of Topsy that I like. You saw it in the other collection too. And this one gave me lots to write about. Oops, wrong link there. No, that's where I went. I went first here and explored the various images, and I found the image for chapter 20, which is the famous image of Topsy that I actually include in my paragraph. So I found this among the illustrations for one of the editions of the text. Now, if you look, now that I've got my image, now that I've got my quote, I can start my passage, I can start drafting my paragraph. Now, I included the image I talked about because I thought it was easy to do and fun, but you're not required to do that. At least, though, provide a link to the image or to the audio if you're using a song, or to the text if you're using a novel or poem or play written at the same time as Uncle Tom's Cabin. But as you can see, this write-up is just like all the ones we did. It has that claim that uses both terms, in my case, free will and social determinism. It then looks at details from the text. So you notice it's full of short little quotes that I integrate into my own interpretive sentences. So I don't plop big chunks of text in. I take smaller pieces and I use them, integrate into sentences where I interpret them. And then I connect to the image. I connect to the image that I want to talk about. And so here you get it in the image capture chapter 20, and I go through and I talk about how this image connects to the passage that I've brought up, what they all say about free will and determinism. And so I'm not just presenting my resources. I'm not just presenting quotes, I'm interpreting them. And I'm not just presenting an artifact like an image or a song or a poem or a story from the same time period. I'm interpreting it. It's the interpretation that makes for the A or B paper. Just plopping the source in that your best hope would be a C if you're lucky. You've got to have the material and an interpretation of the material to get to passing B or A work. Okay, folks, I'm hoping that's a helpful example. I wanted to show you quickly your last step. You're going to complete a works cited. You do not have to do evaluations for this paper, but you do have to have a source, not only for Uncle Tom's Cabin, which you should cite once for the whole paper, but also for each of your body paragraphs, you should have a citation for the artifact from Uncle Tom's Cabin and American culture that you're using. And if you're not sure how to create that kind of citation, our library's MLA page has all sorts of goodies for you. I have a link to this document that walks you through the paragraph. I also have a link to the paragraph itself that you can visit after you watch this video, or you can rewatch the video pausing for whatever you need to. I feel like I was sprinting trying to talk fast. Sorry about that, but I know you guys are pressed for time, and I wanted to make sure you actually watch the video. And if it goes too long, you don't watch them. All right, thanks. See you in Blackboard. Bye.